Hey guys, it's Richard from Grafting Dragon Fruit. I'm here with Charles Malki from IB Organics, and I've brought dragon fruit cuttings over today because Charles here told me it's always been a dream of his to grow dragon fruit. He has a bunch of fruit trees here that are really awesome. You had a 10 and 1 fig tree.
Correct.
So he does stuff that's similar to me, which are grafting.
Love grafting.
Yeah, I graft dragon fruit, but he grafted a fig tree that's one rootstock with 10 different varieties. So I thought that was very cool and awesome. With that being said, we wanted to show you guys how we're going to be potting these dragon fruit cuttings that I brought to Charles today. Also, if you guys see this cutting here, this white stuff is actually something you use for being sunburned. So like kind of a sunblock, and we're going to talk about that, and some really cool all-purpose fertilizer that's all organic, and you can't overuse this. And I'm super excited because I've been looking for an answer of something I can use and help you guys use without, being scared of killing your dragon fruit by over fertilizing. So this is something that I'm really excited to talk about. So Charles, today we're just going to be planting your dragon fruits. We have about 4 different varieties here, and you told me you really like the yellow variety, the Ecuador Polora.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little experience of all the dragon fruits that you've tried, like the white ones, and what was your experience with trying that yellow one?
For sure. First, Richard, I'm very grateful and very thankful for Richard, the king of dragon fruits, and I'm just so excited with all the growth I've seen in just a short period of time on the Grafting Dragon Fruit YouTube channel. With now, I think you've just exceeded 40,000 subscribers and exceeded, I think, 6 million views, and you just did it in a year and a half, which is like mind-blowing. And I just want to congratulate you for all the successes and all the education you brought to not just America, but around the world on just dragon fruit care and propagation and grafting and all of that. But to answer your question, I've been very fond of dragon fruit for several years now. I learned a lot when I visited Edgar Valdivia, as you have as well, who's a member of the California Rare Fruit Growers. And every time I would enjoy it more. And I knew there was a big difference between enjoying them from Edgar Valdivia's garden, fresh pick, compared to the store-bought ones that have been dying for a couple of weeks, if not a month, from the time that it was picked. But then I got my hands on a yellow variety, and that was a game changer, because I know that dragon fruit are typically low in content, but there's a lot of nutritional value and antioxidants which help with anti-aging and anti-cancer and all of this good stuff and goodness that's in this fruit. But the bad part was flavor. Like, the flavor was bland, and I know some people don't want high sugar content, and it's healthier for them, and that's probably what made dragon fruit so successful. But it wasn't until I tried the yellow one that I realized that dragon fruit can be very sweet, as sweet as a mango.
Exactly.
And that's when I tried the yellow varieties, and now I'm hooked. And I've invited you to my home, and I'm so forever grateful for all of these awesome varieties you brought to my property.
All right, and if you guys know me, you guys know I love the yellow dragon fruit, the Ecuador Polora, and my whole Grafting Dragon Fruit YouTube channel was dedicated for me to try to get that variety existed in here in the United States. And finally, if you guys been following along, you guys saw all of the grafting that I did, and now the fruits that I've grafted from the seed is now actually budding. So now we have some Ecuador Polora buds here in America. So I'm super excited about that.
So amazing.
But you're right, the white variety, as you guys already know, has a very neutral taste, not a ton of flavor, but a very pretty fruit. Aesthetically very pleasing, but the palate doesn't really enjoy it too much. But I would still eat it personally because I love dragon fruit, and with all of the healthy benefits that comes with it, you were talking about antioxidant, anti-aging.
Yeah, it's a nutrient-dense fruit. Yeah.
Low calorie. It's great to have. Okay, so the varieties that I brought over today for Charles are the Ecuador Polora variety that we have already planted. So this is what it looks like after we already put it into stakes. There's 4 cuttings into this 20-gallon pot. We've used Fox Farm Ocean Forest, a very high quality, very good, well-drained soil, and then we already set that up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pot the rest of these cuttings, show you guys the whole process, talk about how we're gonna get them ready to get rooting, and then get them growing. So you wanna start with a stake, and if you're gonna be growing in this pot, this 20-gallon pot here, for the rest of its life, I would recommend using a 4x4 post and then building a top canopy for it. And what that's gonna do is just helps it umbrella out. But because Charles has this very lovely area for gardening over here that already has 4x4 posts, he's just gonna let them grow, establish in these pots, and once they get to a certain height, he's gonna tie them to the 4x4 posts and let them kind of umbrella over and have this awesome dragon alley of his own now.
Looking forward.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with Vietnam Red. Vietnam Red is a red flesh variety, red skin, self-fertile, and self-pollinating. So this variety here can actually produce fruits on its own.
That's fantastic.
Okay?
So again, just to reiterate, one variety is all you need, and you can successfully have dragon fruit.
Exactly. So there are different varieties that actually require human help. And I'm talking about varieties like Haley's Comet, Physical Graffiti, just those exotic hybrid dragon fruits that humans create for purely flavor.
Okay.
And they're super pretty, super tasty, but they require a little bit more help from us to get those fruits. And to do that, you can always take pollen from a different variety, like let's say this Vietnam Red here. If this one had a flower and it bloomed the same time as this sugar dragon, you can take this pollen, pollinate it with sugar dragon, and have success in cross-pollination.
Oh, that's excellent.
That's what I mean by cross-pollination. It's just taking two different varieties and then taking their pollen and crossing with each other.
So I just want to reiterate, such as the Haley's Comet, which requires cross-pollination, if you have two Haley's Comets,
it won't work.
those two different plants and those two separate flowers cross-pollinating doesn't equal cross-pollination, right?
That's right, because you're still using the same pollen from the same genetics that the flower bloomed. They have to be two different varieties.
Two different varieties.
Crossing with each other, just like this Vietnam Red and this Sugar Dragon cross-pollinating.
And this is another value why you're putting them so close to one another as well, right?
Correct. So let's say you have all of these different varieties put into the same pot. The only issue you're going to have is remembering what is growing. So what I like to do is as the branches starts to grow and produce new shoots, I would write the name of them until they grow to the very top, until you get familiarized of how the aesthetics of the characters look. And what's that going to do when you have different varieties in one pot? It just saves you, one, cross-pollination headaches, like, oh no, I have this flower blooming, but I don't have another variety to cross-pollinate with, which is a very big problem because when you grow dragon fruit, people think, I just need one dragon fruit just to get used to it.
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of can mess yourself up because you have one and now you're gonna have to wait another year for that dragon fruit cutting that you now think you need to successfully cross-pollinate. So if you're thinking about growing dragon fruit, I really recommend growing at least 2 to 3 different varieties just in case if you need to cross-pollinate them or someone labeled a cutting wrong and you got them off eBay, Craigslist, or somewhere you didn't know that just labels it by the color. This is a very common thing that happens. Then you're gonna have trouble with getting fruit successfully. You're gonna see beautiful flowers bloom, that will happen, but the fruits will never come out. They'll turn yellow and wilt off. So with that being said, that is why we're planting 4 different varieties in here. But all of these varieties that I have in here for Charles are all self-fertile and self-pollinating, so nothing is needed to be done. So that's a very cool thing. I do have one variety called Delight that needs cross-pollinating. That's for Charles, so we can plant that at another time. But
well, let's see the varieties and show the viewers what you've actually brought here. I'm laying them out here like that.
Yes, so here is Vietnam White. This is the one that you're gonna see in stores a lot. This is the very common one. I really like to have Vietnam White in my collection is because there's something called a universal pollinator.
Okay.
So universal pollinators, you can use this pollen to cross-pollinate any hybrid dragon fruit. So if you have Vietnam White and anything else that is self-sterile, you can always revisit this to collect their pollen, pollinate, and you will have fruits set 100% of the time.
So as a universal pollinator, Vietnam White, I'm assuming kind of like the universal blood donor, like their blood can be used for any type of person, type A, type B, or O. So universal pollinator, what do we do if Vietnam White is blooming? I'm collecting the pollen, but none of the other ones are flowering. And I know that this one is going to be, done with, flowering and going in the fruiting phase. What can I do with, basically storing the pollen?
Awesome,
what do I do?
Awesome. I'm very glad you asked that. What you can do is, just like humans, where we can save our sperm and save our embryos for a later time in use, you can do that with dragon fruit pollen. What you do is you freeze them, store them, and just keep them until another time that you need. So what I do is I would collect pollen from Vietnam White or any variety that I know that's going to be blooming later in the time. Just have a backup source of pollen ready for you to use. Just in case you didn't have a universal pollen or a different variety blooming, you can always go to your freezer, and this pollen can be kept in there for months. I've had success with using 6 months pollen frozen, which I just take out, let it warm up to room temperature, and at nighttime be the bee that I am and just go out and pollinate all my dragon fruits, and have had much success.
That's mind-blowing that you can actually save pollen for up to 6 months and still use that pollen to pollinate the other dragon fruit flower.
So like Charles said, we can save this pollen. Very mind-blowing. I didn't actually learn this until about last year. This is still very new stuff that information is not really out yet. So if you guys are really interested in that, go ahead and revisit my YouTube channel. There is a topic where I just talk about how to store pollen, how to freeze and preserve it. So then that way, if you guys are gonna have expecting dragon fruits to be born, you're ready to have some of those donors ready to impregnate those ovaries. So
that's fantastic.
It's really cool to have.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so all those varieties, these are the ones that are self-fertile, like I said again, and they will pollinate on their own, but it's always good to start practicing hand pollinating to get the hang of it, and observing the anatomy of the flower, just so that you know what you're looking at once you're out there.
And for hand pollinating, you're not using your fingers. What are you using?
No, so I like to use like a little brush. The girls use it a lot. It's kind of like a blush brush.
Okay.
Anything that holds powder very well, you can go in there. And dragon fruit flower produce a lot of pollen. I really recommend you get a stainless steel bowl. So then that way you can hold it under the flower and just hit the anthers. There are those little things that look like bells in there, and you just hit that, and there's one, the ovary looks like an octopus with a lot of tentacles, and you take that, pollinate it with that pollen on there, and then that's it. And again, you can find all of this in my dragon fruit channel. It covers everything from A to Z on how to successfully grow dragon fruit.
So let's see again the varieties. We started with Vietnam White, which is a universal donor. Then behind that we've got what?
Sugar Dragon. Sugar Dragon is one of those dragon fruits that don't pack size but pack tons of flavor. They grow up to be about 4 to 6 ounces, but oh boy, those 4 to 6 ounces you're gonna really enjoy, and you're gonna wish you had like 10s more. Vietnam Red. Vietnam Red is a variety just like Vietnam White, but just red flesh. Very tasty, very sweet. The Vietnam White has a bad reputation of not being so sweet. When I grow it, I've learned that they can become sweet. It's just when you buy them in stores, you guys, they're not fully ripe. They pick them 2 weeks early. They're getting shipped from, you know, Vietnam across the country. So by the time they get to us, the skin is still greenish, kind of like red and white. They're not fully vibrant red and pink. That's when you would ideally want to pick dragon fruit. And Vietnam Red, they taste really good once they're fully ripe, for sure.
That's great. And then the fourth variety?
The fourth variety is my ultimate, my favorite, and the one I'm always sharing with you guys on my YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook. You guys can all find that at Grafting Dragon Fruit in the Facebook groups, and my Instagram at Grafting Dragon Fruit. American Beauty is also another universal pollinator.
Wow.
They are universal pollinator. The cool thing is they're purple flesh, and they can go up to about a pound. So beautiful fruits, really tasty, and they are just really like easy to grow, and that's like the main key about American Beauty.
I just love the fact that there's so many different varieties. I know when I go to the big box stores, they have like, they just write white dragon fruit or red dragon fruit or purple dragon fruit, but there's more sub varieties in each of the categories that control, as you've just shared, flavor, sweetness, size, and there's just so many different characteristics. Just as like all of our tastes are different. If you're looking for a sugary, sweet, as I am, dragon fruit, I'm now incorporating a lot of those into my property with these yellow varieties that are right here. And then there's these other also very delicious varieties, easy to grow, self-pollinating varieties.
Yes.
So you don't have to necessarily go out there at midnight or in the late evening hours when they open. There's some easier solutions as well. So depending on what your goals are.
Correct. So I really recommend, if you're a beginner, self-fertile varieties are the way to go, and there's plenty of really good tasting self-fertile varieties out there just to get you started. Once you get the hang and get that dragon fruit bug bit into you, then go ahead and start exploring all the cross-pollinating ones.
Well, I've been bitten for sure, and the other thing I just want to share in regards to a scale of 1 to 10, and I've grown, as you can see, a lot of fruit trees from different species, from citrus to plums to avocados and bananas and so forth. But after learning more over the last year or two, and especially from watching your YouTube channel with Grafting Dragon Fruit, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put Grafting Dragon Fruit on that scale?
Oh, if you're asking me on a scale of 1 to 10, with all the experience I've had, I would scale it at a 1. 1 being because you don't really need to do too much for this to actually produce roots or produce fruits. So once you cut this off, if you cut any other plants off, you leave them in the sun for a few days, they're gonna wilt, dry up, and die very quickly, right? You can cut this dragon fruit, leave it in the sun for a month, and they will still produce roots and still hold its firmness and not really wilt as much. It's because dragon fruits, they fill themselves up with so much water and retain it so much that if they ever need to go to survival mode, they have all this reserve energy in here to go. So that's already a big plus.
Yeah.
You have something like this and you know, you just got into gardening, you forget about it, it's gonna be very easy for you to kill your plant. But with dragon fruit, if you forget it, they're just gonna keep on growing, keep on thriving, and eventually you'll be surprised to see a fruit just come out of nowhere.
I just love the fact that you're putting this on a scale of a 1, where I'd say none of my other fruit trees would get a 1. They
Right.
would be somewhere, you know, higher up the scale. But being that it's one of the easiest and that it's kind of a mysterious and a beautiful and a nutrient dense, you know, high in antioxidant, you know, fruit, and then price tag wise, they're not cheap.
Yeah.
And that's like another, I think, huge reason to be really incorporating dragon fruit into your backyard home orchard.
Right, that was my #1 reason why I really started growing dragon fruit. I really loved it, and I've only tried the white variety at this point, and I really thought it was an amazing thing.
That's how I started too.
Right, and then I was like, but I'm paying $6-7 for a fruit that I can kill in like, you know, 1 day, or if I share with my family, it'll be gone in seconds, right?
Yep.
So that's what made me get really into it, and later to find out that there are hundreds and hundreds of different varieties of dragon fruits being released out there. And look, now here I am, and that's why I created this YouTube channel, so that way I can show you guys how easy it is to grow dragon fruit. And you don't even need that much real estate. Like I was just telling Charles, that it just, you can put it in pot, 20 gallon,
So
grow 4 cuttings and get so much fruits within this 1 pot.
So on the balcony of your apartment or condominium, you can be enjoying fresh
Alright.
picked fruit.
Yes.
That's a 1 out of 10, easy to grow.
You can just put this in the corner of your house, water it, and they'll just do their thing.
Fantastic.
All right, so let's go ahead and get these dragon fruit cuttings planted. And just want to go over some little tips for you guys to get these things ready to go. I want to point out that I've let these calloused out for about 1 to 2 days now. And what I mean by calloused out is you just look at the bottom stem where I cut. You want that to be brown, kind of dry, just because if you put it in here, if it stays too wet, they can get actually bacterial growth on it, molded, and then it just starts to eat away at the flesh of your dragon fruit, and that's no good, because you're gonna have to cut that rotten part off, let it dry again, and start all over. So you want to eliminate any errors or, you know, wasting time of rerooting again by just doing it right the first time.
Okay.
Okay. And with that being said, the rule of thumb to plant dragon fruit, a lot of the times I get this question, Richard, how deep do I plant this dragon fruit? Do I just stick the whole cutting in? And just to give you guys like a little idea of how the roots grow is, these dragon fruits here, they don't ever grow roots from this area. They will grow it from these holes here, and they will climb out and create this really beautiful root ball that will eventually take over this whole pot. And you only need about, I would say, 3/4 of an inch to an inch deep. And that's why we're gonna get some twine, or if you guys have gardening tape, to help support them to grow. Once they are stabilized and they have a really nice area that they are growing in and they aren't moving around a lot, the roots will just start to send out.
Fantastic.
Okay? So I like to plant about 4 cuttings per 20-gallon pot. And I like to use 20 gallons because it's just the perfect size for, you know, feeding nutrients. You're not using so much nutrients, you're not using so much soil, and you're just having a pot that just really fits in your area.
Got it.
I've tried 25 and I've just used, I think, too much soil that I really think I needed. So 20 gallons is ideal. And this is another question I get a lot, is what size pots I use. And 20 gallon is what I use for my entire grow, all the way until they stop producing me fruits.
Fantastic.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and one more thing I forgot to point out is there are 3 sides to dragon fruit. There's this side with the 2 flat side with the fins sticking out, and there's a side that's just flat. And you will see that on most dragon fruit. They're always 3-sided, and it'll be rare for you to see a 4-sided dragon fruit, but it does happen. It does happen. But
Interesting.
You
So
want
it's always 3 sides, and one side is usually flat. So you're using the flat side now to rest it against the
to
stick.
rest it against the stick.
And that gives it
Exactly.
more stability.
Right, and now I'm just shoving it in about 3/4 of an inch, making sure everybody is really nice and tight. Here we go.
I got the twine ready.
Twine ready. Just like that, you guys. So if you have gardening tape, twine, want to just, you know, secure them just in case if wind decides to blow really hard and knock it over, your dragon fruit's gonna tip and then they're not going to be sticking up no more. It's going to be hard for them to root.
So you're securing them long enough for the roots to get established.
Correct. And once they get established, you guys are going to start seeing these cool roots called aerial roots that grow out, and they're going to start binding onto whatever trellis you have and just latch itself on. So if you guys are just letting it grow onto your house, they will climb on top of your roof and find the area with the most sun. So be very careful with these guys. Okay, so once we have these dragon fruits tightly secured, everything looks stable, you know nothing's going to knock over, we're going to go ahead and water them. And we don't water too much because there is not a lot of roots already. You're going to want to just get the base of it, the base of the soil wet, so that way it's a little damp, a little humid, and the heat is what's going to actually help produce the dragon fruit roots.
Got it.
Okay, so how much water you ask? So in a shower setting, I would do about 20 seconds of watering. So what I'm looking for is the base of the soil to be just drenched all around. You don't want any water to drain out because you know now there's too much water in there. There's no roots for the water to get absorbed, so it's gonna sit in there very long. So you wanna water the top just enough so that way the sun can actually evaporate the water, and then in a few days, you would want to water again.
So you probably water just the top 2 inches, whereas I know in my experience with, again, all these other fruit trees I'm growing, my goal is to soak the entire container.
Right.
I'll usually even put a saucer to make sure that the soil medium really soaked up all of that moisture, and then I'll allow it to dry for like the next week or two. The goal being again to soak the potting media and then allow it to dry but never bone dry between watering. That's the general rule. But dragon fruit, that's different.
So that same rule does still apply once your dragon fruit roots have established.
So after the roots.
After the roots start, you can drench it, let it drain out, and it's going to be really happy with some
But
wet
at
soil.
time of cutting, different rules.
Different rule. You want it to be only the top base, so then that way it has time to really dry up.
Okay.
If anything is wet here, it gives it time to just reheal and not sitting in water too long.
Got it.
That is our main goal. It's just not keeping it in water so long. And you're gonna probably ask me next, when do I water it again? So my rule of thumb is if you are grabbing soil and you can clump your soil like this and it stays formed like that, your soil is still good. Versus this soil here, if you can see me grab it, if I grab it, I'm trying to clump it, it's falling apart.
Yeah, it's
you
dry.
know that's time to soil. And when I clump like that, it's about 2 inches of soil that I'm grabbing up. So 2 inches deep, if it's dry, go ahead and water. If you're clumping and it still feels wet and you can squeeze some water out of it, your soil is still pretty good.
Wonderful.
And for fertilizing, you guys will probably ask me that too. Fertilizing, you don't want to fertilize yet because the Fox Farm Ocean Forest soil that you guys will be using and the soil that I use for all of my dragon fruit pots have a lot of organic matter in it. There's bag guano, earthworm casting, fish fertilizer. This will feed your dragon fruit up to 2 to 3 weeks. You're not going to have to add anything into this until you stop seeing growth, until you start seeing growth slow down.
That's an excellent start. That's great.
So when do you normally fertilize your stuff?
So with potted plants, I know different than your in-ground plantings.
Yeah.
The goal with your potted plants, especially during the growing season, being spring, summer, and fall, is to feed them every single month. And to just make sure that there's nutrients, because with each watering, your nutrients are also leaching. The plant will absorb what it can in between, but by enriching the soil monthly, that with in between each watering, if you're watering weekly or every other week, that's feeding the plant's absorbing what it can, and part of it is leaching out. And that's the reason to renew it, to make sure that the plant's always got food during every single month during the growing season, and then just take that break during the winter.
Awesome, and I'm glad you said winter because that was the next thing I was going to ask you. You did tell me something about how we fertilize through spring, summer, fall, and then in the winter time you kind of just let all of the water drain and just reset the soil. I like how you just reset because that's a really good way of pointing that out.
It's a chance to start all over. So if you've made any mistakes with fertilizing, if there's too high salt contents because you've used synthetic fertilizers, sometimes referred to as chemical fertilizers, you're damaging the soil, damaging the roots, damaging the soil biology. Winter is a chance to take a break, but there is something you can do in the winter, being that dragon fruit are in the category of like tropical plants, evergreen plants, where they can still uptake nutrients also in the winter. And that's something I want to encourage the viewers to consider doing, is doing foliar feeding on your plants, just as I would do on my citrus, as I would do on my passion fruits, as I would do on my mangoes and avocados. You can actually foliar feed the plants so that the plants have all of the macro and micronutrients within the plants. And during the winter, the roots are actually cold and dormant, even if they're green. And the goal is the leaves are now sponges during the winter, uptaking the minerals and giving the plants a boost come spring when they go back to bloom. So you'll actually get a jump start on performance and growth and whatever it is that the genetics of the plants have to offer by doing a foliar feed on your tropical plants during the winter. So it's just a light feed, which I'm going to share with you when we get to that step.
Cool, cool. And I always tell my viewers that, you know, fertilize your dragon fruit in the winter. Do your best to just keep them happy. But you know, that foliar is just so much more, it makes so much more sense because yeah, I do want to reset my soil because during that fruitful time of the summer, I'm just already loading so much in there. So resetting that and just doing like a light foliar feed is ideal. And that just prepares your dragon fruit cuttings to be healthy, strong. So when it is fruiting season, they're going to produce you growth and they're going to produce you buds. And that's what our main goal is for these dragon fruits. We want to see flowers. We just don't want to see growth all the time, right?
So I'm going to demonstrate with these fertilizers that are here. I've got the Ivory Organics Super Blend and Premium Blend fertilizers, which basically have all of the NPK, which is your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. This here has a lower NPK in the Premium Blend, whereas the Super Blend has a higher NPK, as you can see here with 13, 14, 13, which is probably one of the highest organic percentage fertilizers you'll find, hence the name Super Blend. You can make up to 120 gallons of the product by taking a tablespoon to a gallon of water. But the thing that's most unique about our fertilizers is that it also includes calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. If you research what are the plant macronutrients that plants need, there's in fact 6 of them, and not just NPK. Everybody pretty much keeps on advertising and marketing NPK, NPK, NPK.
Right.
But that's just nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. But the macronutrients plants need is 6 and not 3.
Right.
So 3 is half the story. This product also includes calcium, which you'll find in the cell walls of all plants. Magnesium, which is in the heart of the chlorophyll molecule, and then sulfur, which helps with the greening of the plant. So, and these are nutrients that need to be in the soil in abundance, hence the name macronutrients, and then it also has micronutrients as well. So a lot to offer the plant. And then to get started, this here is a cutting I got from Edgar Valdivia, who we mentioned earlier, the California rare fruit growers. He gave me a cutting off of his George's variety, which is a white variety, I believe, right, of the dragon fruit.
Correct.
And so what I'm going to do with this container, being it's about a gallon size, I can take up to a tablespoon here of the fertilizer, enrich the topsoil like so, and now every time I go to watering it, we're going to experience more growth, more flowers, more fruit, as it's offering all of the macronutrients that the plants need. And again, as we said, we can take our watering can as well, add a tablespoon of the product to it, allow it to sit in the water for about an hour to even up to a day, allow it to mix. If you're going to use it in a foliar sprayer, you can actually filter the product before you spray it, or you can just go with your watering can and just pour it and drench the entire plant structure, which will absorb the nutrients that way as well. That's another way to feed the plant.
That is super cool because I've always looked for that one nutrient that I can use it for everything. And if I can do that, I would be happy because right now I have earthworm casting, chicken manure, I have synthetic fertilizer just to help with bloom, I have a grow fertilizer just to help with growth. But it seems to me like you're explaining to me that this does more than just fertilize. You're telling me that it can amend your soil.
Correct.
The microphages.
So the beneficial bacteria, the product has beneficial bacteria, beneficial mycorrhiza as well, which for one, just using an organic fertilizer in general will also help with water absorption, which is important for your potted plants. It's feeding the beneficial worms in your soil, it's feeding your beneficial bacteria, feeding your beneficial mycorrhiza, whereas the synthetic products might be feeding the plant and potentially causing harm to the soil biology. And so that's something the product won't do. The other thing too, in regards to your list of products, if I can read, and you've heard about the value of also crushed rock, and to gain additional minerals as well for the plant, but feather meal, alfalfa meal, fishbone meal, kelp meal. So we talked about, using this ocean blend behind us with Fox Farm. Cottonseed meal, potassium sulfate, glacial rock dust, which again is crushed rock, getting more micronutrients into the soil and available to the plants. Neem cake, rock phosphate, oyster shell flour, crustacean meal, and magnesium sulfate. So all of these ingredients are all contributing in its way towards the macronutrients as well as offering a lot of the micronutrients to develop optimal plant health rather than adding this product plus that product plus another product and CalMag and all these different things, when you can just have one product that has it all. And that was the goal with the all-purpose fertilizers by Everagain.
And I think that is absolutely amazing that this does not only feed the plant, but it feeds the whole ecosystem of the whole plant that it's living in.
That's the goal in the organic gardening.
That is amazing. And another thing, guys, you can't overuse this. You told me that you can dump this whole bag in and it would just be a waste of the fertilizer, but it won't kill your plant.
So imagine again, when it comes to organic fertilizers, it's the equivalent as if an animal came and died right next to your plant. And now the bones are offering the phosphorus that's contributing towards flowers and fruit, and the potassium within its blood, and the nitrogen within the muscle, and all of those things are breaking down. You need good soil biology to help decompose and return those elements to the benefit of the plant. So the organic garden is really creating an ecosystem of life and not just growing a green looking plant. So organic gardening is a whole philosophy, not just buying an organic fertilizer. It goes towards pest control, and everything else is trying to benefit the whole biology surrounding the plant, not just again trying to create a green plant.
Exactly. And organic definitely makes your fruit taste better. I've had a year where I just was wanting big fruits, lots of fruits, and using the synthetic fertilizer, but my fruits didn't turn out that great. Next year, I started going all organic with just chicken fertilizer, earthworm casting, fish fertilizer, stuff like that, and I could totally tell a difference.
It makes sense. You're talking about also using worm castings in your plant, and the plant also has a biology to itself as well. Plants have been here for millions of years before people, and millions of years before bugs and all of these other creatures that roam the earth. But plants can't move, and so they've got a biology within them that also creates the defenses and to defend and release chemicals that make it less tasty to eat. But the point being is the worms that are within your soil also have these castings, and within the castings there's these chemical proteins, enzymes that are released by the worms called chitinase. I'm hoping you can cut this little part out. And here we go. Called chitinase. And the chitinase that's released by the worm castings, which is like the worm manure, is then introduced into the soil. And when you go to water it, the plants uptake the chitinase enzymes, and that offers now the plants defense to pests actually eating it. Anything with an exoskeleton, such as a beetle or a grasshopper, or anything that might be munching on your plants, that exoskeleton actually gets weakened by chitinase, which is an enzyme that actually creates holes in their skeletons.
Wow.
So it's now weakening the bugs, so that if they're eating your plants, they actually get sicker just by having an abundance of worms and worm life or worm castings in your soil. So that's the value of integrating biology into your plants, and something that a synthetic fertilizer would never be able to do for your plants.
That's just one of the many reasons to go all organic. It's just so beneficial for you, and just to help with pests in low grades. So that's really awesome. And the one thing I really like about your all-purpose fertilizer from IV Organic was it is powder form, and you saw how he just sprinkled this powder all over the top without any water.
You can put another one.
So check it out. So this is all you guys need to do. If you guys been seeing me, I have that 44-gallon trash can that I fill with water with a dolly on top, and I've been pulling that heavy trash can and feeding every single one of my dragon fruit.
Oh wow.
That is tough to do, and especially if I'm really tired, I wouldn't even want to do it, but it needs to be done so then you can have tasty and really happy growing dragon fruits. So with that, I can just now go around, sprinkle it, saves me time, saves me from hurting my back from pulling
That's a lot of work, yeah.
Yeah, from pulling that trash can, and now just go around and just finish it with a watering.
So it's just a tablespoon per gallon, and no more than about 5 tablespoons, even for a 20-gallon container. So you don't need that much of the product, and the goal again with your potted plants is once a month. So that first week in my mind of every month, I'm usually visiting all my potted plants and making sure that they have all the elements and nutrition to get through another successful month of growing and flowering and fruiting and doing all the good things.
How easy is that, guys? Just remember, every first of the month, go outside, take this powder, put, what would you say, 4 tablespoons for a 20-gallon?
Yeah, I would go no more than about 5. On the back it says up to 5, regardless of your size, because again, you're enriching the soil, and the goal is just to keep frequenting the plant, and being granular is going to last longer than also a liquid feed. So the granular is going to continuously break down also between your waterings. So a granular, for example, in your backyard soil will last about 2 to 3 months continuously feeding your plants, compared to a liquid fertilizer that on average feed your plants for about 1 to 3 weeks. So big difference with using a granular over a liquid fertilizer.
So you're gonna save money, save water, which is more money, and you're gonna save time, which is really important at this point of
For
time
sure.
now, right?
Very well said.
So very cool, very cool. So fertilizer we covered, we planted our dragon fruit, so this pot is definitely ready to just go sit and root. And what I do next after we establish all of the planting, you're gonna wanna put it into shade. There's no direct sunlight yet because they don't have roots to go ahead and hydrate them to keep them cool. If you leave them in sun, they're gonna start to turn yellow and eventually dehydrate and then die. Not die, they'll probably produce roots, but then it's just going to take them a longer time to recover and then start to be established.
So you'd recommend that I hide these dragon fruit cuttings like under my gazebo for the time being, or
Yes.
offer them morning light, or no light for now?
No light for now. Any diffuse light would be good, but no direct light. Direct light now is just going to damage them. It's going to just start them evaporating all the nutrients that's already inside. So once you see them start to plump up, or if you see a new shoot come out,
Then you know the
that's
difference.
really good signs that they have established and they're growing, and you can go ahead and start taking them outside.
Got it.
So this one is done. So speaking about sunburns and getting burned, if that ever happens, or if your dragon fruit, let's say you live in a very good condition like me, we're in California, South California, but sometimes I do have heat waves where it can hit up to 90 to 100 degrees.
Well, it's in the 90s right now.
It's in the 90s today, so if you're leaving your dragon fruits in the 90s for about 3 days, I guarantee you're gonna start seeing yellowing, sometimes even rotting can happen, and mold just kind of starts growing and rots the whole thing. And I like how you had the sunblock for plants. Can you tell me
Correct.
a little bit about that? Because that's something I definitely want to start using when the heat wave starts coming around the corner. That's been something I've been stressing about because it kind of just pushes me back a little bit.
That's great. So this is Ivory Organics. It's a 3-in-1 plant guard. As you can see here, Ivory Organic 3-in-1 plant guard offers protection against damaging sunburn, insects, and rodents for use on your roses, fruit, nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs, and it's for use in organic production, healthier than using latex paint and tar-based products, and it's OMRI listed for organic use. This one here is in color white, and all of these cans on the back, it'll actually show you how the product can be used as a brush on by simply filling up the can with water. It comes in a powder form, or as a foliar spray. You can make up to 22 to 25, up to 5 gallons of a foliar spray off of this pint. Or you can also use it as tree paste by simply adding less water to the contents. And then it's also available in colors brown if you're looking for a more natural color, or color green, being these stems are green. And this here is an example that we did in an earlier lesson where we whitewashed. I always like calling it whitewashing the heart of the plant, being the tree trunk and the lower branches.
Yeah.
But here we're dealing with these dragon fruit cuttings that the entire stem is got chlorophyll and responsible for making the sugars and the vitamins and nutrition to grow and flower and fruit. But now that I've known that this has been rooting for the last 6 months, I've whitewashed the bottom part to protect it, because I'm now taking it from a shady location in my garden to a much sunnier one.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that the heart of the plant doesn't burn, as plants will and do experience, as our skin does, first, second, and third degree burns. And there's been, for example, like some citrus trees, avocado trees, any fruit trees, peach trees, that when, for example, they get pruned, like in summer pruning, sun enters that lower canopy and the plant will go from a discoloration, being like a first degree burn, which you just mentioned, like yellowing happening maybe on the dragon fruit, to a second degree burn, which is a little more severe. And then third degree burn, like on fruit trees, would be the bark is now peeled back, cambium layer is now like charred, and you're looking at the underlying supporting wood.
Yeah.
So third degree burns are common, in trees, and especially, plants that you're bringing home from the nursery where they've always been in a group and, seeking the, protection and shelter of other neighboring plants. When you pull them now into the garden where they're now getting full sun, or it's again a hot day, the plants burn. Whitewashing is something that should be done on the same day that you bring it home or the same day that you plant it, to protect it from burn. And I always like teaching that if there's an encyclopedia on plant care, whitewashing is usually just a paragraph. It's one of the most least understood, but it's also a very valuable and important lesson in the overall health and plant care management of virtually any plant.
Awesome. Yeah, so very common where I would leave a dragon fruit cutting in the shade for so long, and then I would think that, okay, it's ready time to put them in the sun. That's not always the case. Even though they are cactuses, they can't take full sun directly. You're gonna have to get them to warm up to it. So what I do is, if I didn't have this whitewash, I would just normally take them out to sun about 50%, 60%, and then probably on the third week, I'll go 100%. But it seems like if I have this sunblock, then I can go ahead and just brush it on, leave it, and not so much damage would happen, and it can probably adapt to the conditions a lot sooner than the way I would normally do it.
I agree. It'd be significantly sooner and faster. But again, plants, just like people, I mean, when you're moving them, you're changing them, you're doing anything to them, it's a stress. And the goal is acclimation is best.
Right.
But I also want to share with you, if you take a look also at the very top, even though we've whitewashed the stem, you can see that the very top also has some whitewash protection in a very dilute form, still allowing light to penetrate. The stems can still photosynthesize. But I just want to share how you can also whitewash the entire plant structure. So a lot of, even my tomatoes, my peppers, my lemon trees, anything I plant, I usually whitewash the entire structure, as I've done now here, as this is now going from a shady part of my garden to now a full sun location. So that's something I'll be doing with this once I pull it from a shady location. And how soon do you expect this to start rooting for us?
So I'm expecting this with the warm climate that we've been having, and if you're keeping this relatively damp and not letting it dry all the way, you should be seeing roots within 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, that's super fast.
2 to 3
And
weeks.
again, we are in the middle of summer right now, so things are happening pretty fast.
So they will grow very quick, and you will start seeing a new shoot, or this thing will just start getting really plump, and that's signs that they're gonna be ready to just thrive right away.
Talking about summer being the peak, and I know dragon fruit are growing the fastest and so forth. I want to go back to the fertilizer, and that when it comes to feeding your plants, to also kind of follow that curve of how your dragon fruit are growing, being like in spring, and as the plants are waking up, to not feed your plants as much as you would in the summer,
Right.
when the plants are now peaking with 14 hours of daylight. It's hotter, it's growing faster, it's supporting flowers and fruit. There's more activity, and hence you're going to want to make sure that there's more nutrients in the soil to benefit and support all that's happening above the ground. Whereas in the spring, it's, whatever the directions are, I'd cut back by 50%. And also in early fall, I would do the same. And I'm not just talking about Ivory Organics products, I'm talking about fertilizer in general. And then in the winter, no feeding the soil other than foliar feeding the stems. And again, these are just light feeds you might do once to up to 3 times during the winter months, just to make sure it's got all of that nutrition, to kind of get that jump start come spring.
Right, and in the wintertime it rains so much anyways, and if you're using fertilizer, they're all gonna get washed away anyways.
Well, the roots aren't doing much in the winter, so.
And they're sleeping. They're not gonna really care. They're not growing. They're not doing anything but sleeping. So you want to use all of that super good stuff during the seasons that they're awake and actually trying to benefit out of it.
For sure.
All right, cool. All right, so last but not least, we've talked about planting these. We talked about how to protect from sun. So we just gotta prune this rest of the dragon fruit, and then we're gonna be done for the day, and we can go ahead and put this in an area that they will root nicely, and then once they root, we can go ahead and put them with direct full sunlight.
Looking forward. So I was excited when I first saw this, and I'm like, hey, I got 3 branches, and now I'm gonna end up looking like, Richard Lee's, dragon fruit food forest, and I'm gonna have a lot of branches. But you said, no, we're not supposed to have 3 branches, especially not at this young and short stage.
Yeah, so what my analogy when I explain this to people is I always tell people, think of this as a river, and these little stoppers, the areoles, where they grow new shoots are dams.
Okay.
So as this root here is pushing nutrients up, is finding this. So this is the first dam that is stopping by, and it's feeding this now. So what I'm gonna do is, we have 3 shoots. I'm gonna look and observe to see which one is the healthiest, the biggest, and the one that's just gonna grow easiest on my post. So I would say this one, because it's at the very top.
Okay.
Even though it's not the biggest, I know that it's gonna be easier for me to tie to the post. And if you guys remember, I talked about the backside. This backside is right here. So imagine a post being right here. Once this grows, you can just tie that.
Continue
supporting it, and it's just gonna be very easy. So now we're just gonna block these dams out by cutting it, and let me explain to you guys what happens after I cut this. So I've cut that one, I've cut this one, and this is just early pruning that you do to help induce vigorous growth. So now that that's cut, I basically stopped the flow of this area. So now that it's going here, it's going, oh no, there's nothing else to grow this way, so let's just all focus our energy on this shoot. And that other one that was here, that was focusing energy on here, is now gonna revert to this area only. And now all of the energy of the dragon fruit, it's just gonna go straight to this growth.
So now we can expect this to grow faster.
Faster.
Instead of it being diluted energy-wise by these 2. So
Exactly.
this could potentially grow 2 to 3 times faster now that we're not supporting 3 branches.
Correct. It's like my siblings are with me and I had to share food with them for so long. I took them out and now I get to eat all the food myself.
Poor siblings, okay.
And now they get to grow.
But the good part with these siblings is I've now got 2 more George's varieties of dragon fruit, which I got from, again, Edgar Valdivia's property. So I'll be planting these as well. You have a tip again in regards to before I plant these,
Right.
that I should wait.
You should wait at least 1 or 2 days. As you guys can see, versus my other one, they're still very green. There's still juices running through there, so you know it's still moist. And you don't want to keep moisture with moisture because, you know, bad things like mold, bacteria just start to grow.
And
So once they callus up a little bit and I start to see that it's browning or it's hard to touch, then they're ready to go.
in about how many days again?
I would say about 3 days in this hot weather that we have now. You don't want it to dry out too much because they're young shoots. You want it to let them dry out according to the size of them.
Okay.
Bigger shoots can last longer to dry out, up to 7 days. Smaller shoots, I would push maybe 3 days max.
So these are shorter, so closer to 3 days. And then should I store them in the sun or shade or?
Shade. Remember, again, when we are talking about rooting cuttings, there's no roots to keep them hydrated. So we're going to continue to keep them in shade and just
Okay.
let them do their thing until they do have roots. Then it's safe for them to take them outside.
Fantastic, looking forward. I'm gonna find a shady spot over here.
Awesome. All right, so that concludes our little lesson today, and I've learned so much with Charles today. There was a lot of things that I didn't
Learned
know
so much from you.
about all these macronutrients that nobody ever talks about. Macronutrient is actually very important for human consumption as well, something that we don't even talk about. So it's really cool that I've learned all this stuff today. Really excited to use this because, you know, I want to really see how my dragon fruit's doing this, how they taste, and, you know, be a really cool experience because I've been used to my old routine. Now it's time to change it up and see if we can make things better. And that's all about gardening. It's figuring out your mistakes, learning from other growers, gardeners that have experience elsewhere, and sometimes they just, you know, are professionals at what they're doing. Like Charles here with IV Organics, he created this.
Thank you.
Right? So, and I definitely want to use this whitewash stuff here to protect my dragon fruits from burning. If you guys remember from my dragon fruit episode, you guys saw me doing surgery on my dragon fruits by cutting off all those rotten parts. Hopefully I don't have to do that this year by saving my plants with some of this sunblock.
That's fantastic.
All
And
right.
thank you so very much, Richard, for
Yes.
having me here on the Grafting Dragon Fruit YouTube, and thank you for this opportunity.
So glad to get to be here and speak with Charles. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode today, and I hope you guys learned a lot. I know I did. And if you guys ever have any questions, go ahead and drop it in the comment section below, and we'll get back to you guys as soon as I can. And if you guys have any questions about how these IV organic things works, we're gonna leave a link to Charles' YouTube channel.
Okay.
Is there any other way we can contact you?
If anybody wants to just write your comments down below, I think between yourself and myself, we'll be frequenting this particular post and trying to answer your questions as fast as we can.
Awesome, guys. So if you guys haven't already subscribed to Charles' channel or my channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And that's it. We'll see you guys on the next Dragon Fruit episode. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye now.